The On the Mark podcast is brought to you in part by Synovus. Synovus, the bank of here. Here should be the most important place to your bank because here is where you are. Synovus, the bank of here.
Welcome to On the Mark, a PGA Tour podcast. Here's your host, someone who walks inside the ropes but thinks outside the box, Mark Immelman.
How's it? Golf is back, tribe. We had the TaylorMade Driving Relief Skins game last week, and I got amped for that. And we've got golf upcoming this week in the match 2.0, I guess is what you would call it. Tiger v. Phil. Add Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. Promises to be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to that, as I'm sure you are. If you enjoyed golf, tweet me. I want to hear from you. Live golf back on television. It is exciting. Tweet me. I'm here at the studio, the On the Mark studio at On the Mark Radio. Or personally, you can follow me at Mark_Immelman. That is on Twitter and on Instagram. And check me out on Skillest. I know on this podcast we've got the legendary Butch Harmon, arguably the greatest instructor of all time, with respect to my mentor David Ledbetter and the greats like Percy Boomer and Ernest Jones and John Jacobs and such. But anyways, check me out on the Skillest app. If you want your golf swing analyzed, you can touch base with me there. I've been helping folks around the world, tribe members. And I love the fact that people would reach out and say, hey, love the podcast. We heard you on the podcast. Help us with our golf swing. Help us improve our game. So check me out on the Skillest app. Of course, you can find all of our podcasts at pgatour.com/podcasts or at markimmelman.com. Just go there to my website. You can check out the pods there, or just subscribe to us wherever you download yours, iTunes or Stitcher or TuneIn. Go and check us out. Search On the Mark Golf. Great guests there, all meeting in one place to help you to better understanding with great knowledge and insights so you can improve your golf game. Now, speaking of knowledge and insight, couple that with experience, Butch Harmon has no peer in the industry right now. Just the wisdom, the experience, and the contact he's had with so many greats of the game, starting with his father, Claude Harmon Sr., and Ben Hogan and company. And Butch has worked with basically everybody. All of the great players in the game, Butch has been involved with them somehow. And he is right here on this On the Mark podcast to help you to play better golf. This segment of the On the Mark podcast, it's brought to you by Synovus. Synovus, the bank of here. Okay, fans, this is something I've looked forward to for the longest of times. On the line, basically the doyen of golf instruction, someone I've aspired to for many a year, Butch Harmon. Butch, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Mark. Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure. It is a pleasure. I've been looking forward to it. I quickly got to ask before we dive into it, what has Butch Harmon been up to during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, my wonderful wife, Christy, has me on a house lockdown for the last 2 months.
Uh-huh.
At my age, at 76, she says I'm not allowed to go out in the public because she doesn't want me to catch anything. Fortunately, our golf courses opened up a couple weeks ago here in the Las Vegas area. I live on a golf course, Anthem Country Club, and we all have our own golf carts. So I get out and hit some balls and play with some friends every now and then. So at least I'm getting out of the house, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, no kidding.
I think I've read more books in the last 2 months than I've ever read in my life.
Well, you know what? You speak of books. One of the books that I've read during this time is called The Pro, written by a dear friend of mine, Steve Eubanks, and he collaborated with you. Stories about your father, Claude. And it sits on my bedside table, and I'm going to get to this in just a minute. But before that, for the folks downloading this to hear from Butch Harmon, I have one question, and to put you into context. You were a good player in your own right. All the brothers were. The pivot to golf instruction and then the ascension as to the top of the game in golf instruction, was this ever planned or was this completely natural for you?
I don't think anything was planned. You know, when you're younger, you aspire to be whatever you aspire to be. Having grown up in our family, my father, I think, is the greatest instructor that's ever lived. Mm-hmm. I mean, and we grew up around it as kids. So we were always around him and great players and watching him teach. And I know as a junior golfer, I used to try, even though I didn't know what the hell I was talking about, I thought I did. I used to try and help my friends with their games and stuff. If I saw something, and really all I was doing was repeating things that I had heard my dad said.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, my goal was I went to Q school in 1968, was a rookie on the tour. And 69, I played 69, 70, 71 full times. And my goal was that I was going to play until my oldest child, my daughter Michael, was of school age. Okay. And to see where I stood and test myself. And at the end of the 3 years, I mean, there wasn't a lot of money in the game in those days, Mark. You know, I mean, the leading money when they were making about 125,000. So you didn't need to make a tremendous amount of money to keep your card.
Yeah.
We weren't even making enough to cover expenses. So to me, it was at that point in time that I think I needed to really be realistic with myself and say, you know, I think I'm pretty good, but I'm obviously not as good as these guys. And I had a very bad temper because I'm such a perfectionist that I let my temper get in the way, and it kept me from being a better player than I could. But that's neither here nor there because everything worked out for the right thing. And, you know, at 71, I decided maybe I need to go in a different direction.
Yeah. Well, look, a different direction. Basically, you taught guys like Greg Norman, Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, kind of a list of who's. You talk of your dad. I want to get to it, but there's one story in the book that I think there's so much to be learned by. And it was the young Harmon boys and dads on the range there. And it's something about not ever missing the ball on the left-hand side of the course. and well, you know what? It's a great story, but there's so much for everyone listening to this to learn from that.
Well, you know, the interesting thing about it, and a lot of people know this, my father and Ben Hogan were best friends. And they played at every major championship. They played every practice round together. And both of them, in their younger careers, were big hookers of the golf ball. Okay. And both of them changed. Mr. Hogan after his accident, my dad as he got older, they changed to go away from this dreaded hook they always used to hit and learned how to fade the ball. And they were great believers in playing the ball with a fade, easier to control, so on and so forth. So we would be practicing on a range, and you know, we're just kids, just firing it out there, hitting big hooks or hitting whatever. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. We're just swinging. And my dad says, "All right, here's the deal, boys." And he took his wallet, and he always carried a large amount of money with a rubber band wrapped around it.
Okay, yeah.
And he just threw it on the ground. And he said, "All right, boys, you see that flag out there? If I hit one ball with this 5-iron to the left of that flag, all that money is yours." And we're like, "Oh, you're on." and 30 minutes later, that damn wallet was still laying on the ground, and we weren't getting any of that money.
You know,
and his theory was, you know, and he believed very strongly in club path and club face angle, very similar to the great John Jacobs. I think what I've learned the most of my golfing career were from my dad and John Jacobs. And he used to talk about a back of the left hand for a right-handed golfer, the bow in the left wrist, keeping the club face square through impact. And his line was, "You see, boys, when I hit it, I've got Bethlehem steel down here in the left wrist. You boys have linguine in there. That thing's coming in there flopping all over the place."
Okay.
This is kind of how we grew up, Mark. This is what we put up with. And when your father's won the Masters, there isn't a hell of a lot you can do because he'll just go get his green jacket out or something.
Yeah, there's no arguing. It's kind of like me with Gary Player. He'll be like, "You know, Mark, I respect you as a golf teacher, but when you can beat me, then I will listen to you."
Yeah, there you go.
Butch, you know, you bring up a theoretical discussion there, and I want to quickly visit it because you've worked with Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka, and we're in an era right now where the proliferation of this more bowed wrist at the top to sort of create Bethlehem steel through contact has become a thing. Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, you know, when I first worked with Dustin Johnson, I sat him down in my office and I said, "Look, DJ," I said, "the one thing you need to know, I know that position at the top, your club face is shut and your left wrist is very bowed. You don't have to worry about that. I'm not going to change that. That's how you swing a golf club." I said, "I've seen a lot of good players play from there." And he said, "Oh yeah, David Duval." I said, "Well, more importantly than that, I saw my dad play from that position his whole life, and Lee Trevino play from that position his whole life." And so I think for me, if you had to err, I would rather see someone shut at the top than wide open.
All right.
Because if you shut at the top and you have any strength at all, you can hold that off as you go through, or you can let it release over if you're trying to hit a draw. If the club face is wide open at the top, you've got to do a lot of catching up with your hands, and it disrupts the timing of the golf swing. I'm not saying you can't play from an open position, but I think if you look at, especially the modern golfers, if you look at Dustin, if you look at John Rahm, if you look at Koepka, if you look at these guys, a lot of them are playing from that position. I just think at a talent level, with the speed of the people's bodies, if you come from a shut position and you're able to generate the rotation of the body that you get, it's much easier to control the flight of the ball and the shape of the ball. And so I'm not saying I would teach everybody to get the club shut at the top, but if you had to err one way or another, I'd rather see someone there than the club face wide open.
Well, absolutely.
And, people, as you know, Mark, people think just because your left wrist is bowed, that means the club face is going to be shut. But if you think about it, a lot of it depends on your grip. If you've got a fairly neutral grip and stuff and not too strong and you have it bowed, the club face isn't going to be as shut as you think. Now, if you've got a really strong grip, like say a Fred Couples does, he couldn't play from that bowed position. That's why you see him and his left wrist is more cupped because his grip's so strong. Yeah. So a lot of times a player's grip helps you understand where they need to be at the top of the swing.
I love that, and I love the way you reference that too, and it's why I've always looked on with such admiration to you, because when you look at a Butch Harmon stable of golfers, it's not like you see a common thread. But the one common thread, I guess, is one of your dad's pearls, and it says there's only one position in the swing that matters, and that's impact. Everything else, he says, is window dressing.
Well, there's no doubt about that. I mean, if you think about it, for me, in my success with the best players in the world, very seldom could you walk down the range and say, oh, that guy works with Butch Harmon, he works with Butch Harmon, because you don't see a lot of comparison. The only two that there's a comparison to are Adam Scott and Tiger Woods. And the reason for that is when Adam came to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas when he was 18, and Tom Crow, the great Aussie golfer and founder of Cobra Golf, a dear friend of mine, said, will you look after the young man? I said, sure, I'd be happy to. Well, he showed up with that swing. He and his dad, who he had worked with, had copied the swing of a young Tiger Woods. So other than that, I think in teaching, here has to be the way you think about things. There's two things you can do. You can teach golf to people, or you can teach people to play golf. We in our family believe we're trying to teach people to play golf. We're not trying to teach you a golf swing. We're trying to teach you to play golf, because everybody's different. I can remember in my 10 years of working with Tiger Woods, everybody that came to me said, okay, I want to swing like Tiger Woods. I said, no kidding, so do I. Unless I can climb in his body, that's not possible. I said, I got to make you swing the best you can swing. And the way we were taught by our father was to never take away what someone does naturally, just make it better. Yeah. And so that's how myself, my brothers and I, anybody who's ever worked for any of us, the way we teach all the young assistants, that's how we teach them. Teach people to play golf. Don't teach golf swing.
Love it. Now get this. I want your commentary here. Along those lines, Butch, your dad says, if someone tells you there is one perfect golf swing, walk away and don't listen to another word he says.
Oh, I agree 100%. Look at anyone who's ever had the opportunity, and I would hope that anybody who loves golf takes this opportunity to go to St. Augustine, Florida, and go to the World Golf Hall of Fame, because there are hundreds of strange-looking swings in there, but they all work, because the secret to golf is repetition. I mean, you could look at Jim Furyk at 50 years old, he's just about to turn 50. He still competes on the PGA Tour with a swing that, and his father's his only coach. If his father had changed that swing and made him look perfect in his swing, we'd have never heard of Jim Furyk.
No kidding.
You'd have never heard of the guy. I mean, if you look at the greats of the world, you look at the great Gary Player from your country, from South Africa, you look at Trevino, you look at Jack Nicklaus, you look at Arnold. I mean, they had a lot of strange characteristics in their swing. The common thread is getting the club square to impact and being able to repeat it time and time again.
Incredible. Hey, that is the perfect segue to another pearl. And I've seen you preach this to folks where it's basically no one will ever perfect the game. But you use the term repetition. It's about repeating something that you do naturally under pressure and not under pressure.
Well, the key is for tour players under pressure. You have to create a golf swing. It's going to, as my dad used to say, you've got to create a swing that's going to work on a back nine on Sunday when you got a chance to win. I mean, and so everybody's different. The thing I've been fortunate enough to do to work with all the great players that I've worked with is I learned as much from them as they learned from me, and that just made me better at my job. You know, the old timers, the people you grew up with, the people I grew up with, they made the game very simple. Mm-hmm. They talked about just a position here to do this. Nowadays, you know, they got all this ground force and hit up on it and all these angles. And the TrackMan says you're 4 degrees from the inside, 3 degrees down. Well, why the hell don't you tell the guy why he's doing that instead of throwing out some numbers there? My dad used to have to show you how simple the old timers thought and how I think. My dad used to have a scenario. He says, let me explain something to you. This is how simple golf can be. If you have a one-shot lead in a golf tournament and you're standing on the 18th tee at Pebble Beach, if the heel gets to the ball before the toe, you win. If the toe gets to the ball before the heel, you lose.
Exactly.
And he says, it's that simple. And we would say, well, Dad, how do you want me to do that? I don't care how you do it. Just do it. But see, that's the way the old timers thought. They didn't have all this technology and all this other stuff and all these things going through their heads. I mean, as you know, Mark, and you've been a good player your whole life, the golf swing's over with in a second and a half.
Yeah, man.
You don't have a whole lot of time to think about stuff. You know, that's what the practice tee's for.
Yeah,
practice tee's for working on the mechanics. The golf course, you better go play golf.
You're so right. And you know what? I giggle at your anecdote from your dad, and I've heard you tell it. But the truth of it is, and it's one of the pearls in the book, is like, if it seems that simple, it is. Don't overcomplicate the thing.
Well, I can remember, I was telling this story the other day to a guy. I can remember when I was playing once in the practicing, and Dad was watching me hit balls, and I hit a bad shot. And I said, oh, yeah, I know what I did wrong. And my dad says, well, if you knew what you did wrong, why the hell are you still doing it? You know, and so we hear that all the time when we teach amateur golfers. Oh, I know what I did wrong there. No, you have no idea what you did wrong.
Oh, this is brilliant. Hey, that reminds me of a story. I want you to share this. I'm pivoting, but this is the beauty of having Butch Harmon on. Tell us the story about Butchie's got a shanker. I think that one's brilliant.
Oh, it was when I was, when I got home from Vietnam in 1966. Mm-hmm. 67, 68, I worked for my dad at Thunderbird and at Wingfoot Golf Club. And I was teaching a great friend of ours, Bill DiGiacomo, his name was. He's not with us anymore. He wasn't a great player, but he loved the game, and he had the shanks. So he said, I'm going to come out from New York City. Can you give me a 30-minute lesson about 5:30? I said, absolutely, Mr. Giacomo. You know, I'm getting like, I don't know, $15, $20 for a 30-minute lesson. And I said, yeah, absolutely. I'm your man. And now, I'm a young pro. Think I know what I'm doing, don't have a clue. And he starts shanking it. Well, I'm perplexed because I can't get him out of it. And my dad's down there giving another lesson. He's watching me, and I know he's laughing watching me. Because what most people don't realize, you would understand if you're a good player. Most shanks with a full swing are really hit with a closed club face. And you can tell that by looking at how skinny the divot is. Mm-hmm. Because the toe hits the ground and the ball hits off the hosel and squirts off to the right. Well, I thought he was coming in wide open, and so I'm telling him, get that right hand in there a little more. And I mean, this poor SOB is shanking every single shot. He never got the club on the ball. So at the end of 30 minutes, I said, Mr. Giacomo, there's no way I can charge you for this lesson. I didn't help you. About that time, Dad wanders down, and he goes, Butchie boy, you got a shanker, huh? I said, yeah, Dad. I said, I have no idea how to get Mr. Giacomo out of this. He says, I know that. He's almost hit me twice with these shanks down there because you're not helping him. And he just took his club cover off, laid it on the outside of the ball and said, now, Bill, make a few practice swings for me and don't hit the club cover. Yeah. And so all of a sudden, he's coming more from the inside. He's not over the top throwing it. He puts a ball there and he hits it perfect. He puts another ball there and hits it perfect. He went, hoo-hoo! Couldn't figure that shank out, could you? But you just walked off.
Yeah, but a lesson learned, and it's why
that's how you learn.
Yeah, and I love the simple cure to what could be a disastrous problem for a golfer.
Oh, absolutely. You know, the worst thing about it, we've all shanked a shot. The worst thing about it is you have to go hit the next one.
Exactly.
Like, oh man, where the heck is this going? So you better understand what causes it. And for your listeners, if they're hitting shanks, just look at the divot. You got a long, skinny divot because the toe is digging in the ground because you're coming over the top and throwing the club in there.
Yeah.
And just put something down there. We use in teaching at my academy, we use club boxes all the time. And the club box is the greatest teaching aid ever invented because you just put it down there and tell a guy just miss it. And instinctively, when you put something in their vision, Mark, and have them make a few practice swings with no ball, their body reacts to what they see because they know, boy, if I come over the top of this thing, I'm going to nail this box, and I don't want to be on this video of me hitting this box. And it's the same thing. Golf is a very difficult game, but young instructors today make it more difficult than it is. We were taught that you need to teach golf at a second grade level. In other words, a kid who's going to second grade at school can understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And the other thing, the most important thing is we were taught was pick out what my dad used to call the cancer in the golf swing. What is the one thing in this golf swing that keeps this guy from hitting a good shot? And then you fix that, and 2 or 3 or 4 other things just fall into place instead of trying to fix 4 things to fix the one problem. And that's why I think my brothers and I have always had so much success in teaching because we make it simple.
Well, you know, a lot of folks and golfers listening to this are like, you see them fixing the symptoms of a cold instead of the bug that caused the cold, where you guys got straight to the cancer, the heart of the matter right away, and then everything else, there was the knock-on effect.
Well, I agree. Another funny story about my dad is when I was an assistant working for him at Thunderbird in Palm Springs, he was giving a guy a lesson. And, you know, my dad was a genius. He had you in 2 or 3 swings.
Okay.
He had such a great eye. He could see everything that went. I mean, he saw a golf swing. He sees 100 things at one time. And he'd fix the guy in 4 or 5 swings. And so he with him about 15 minutes. He said, all right, pal, I'm going to leave you on that one. We'll go down here and watch Mr. So-and-so. And the guy goes, oh, Mr. Harmon, I thought we had a 30-minute lesson. He goes, let me explain something to you. When you go to the doctor and the doctor prescribes what's wrong with you, and he prescribes the medication that he's going to give you for it, he doesn't hold your hand for the next 20 minutes. He said, now I'm going to be right over here, and I'll see if you have any problems, and I'll give you a shout-out. I said, well, Dad, there's no way I could get away with that. He said, of course you could. You don't have a clue what you're talking about.
That's brilliant. I want to build on that with one of your dad's pearls. And you've seen this happen with all the greats. Young Tiger Woods comes to you. Young Greg Norman comes to you. And the statement is improvement requires a long-term approach, you know, even though your dad can fix it quickly. Speak to that, because I think in this modern day era, golfers are they got too instant a mindset. Oh,
there's no doubt about it. Change takes time. You know, and I try and tell the average player that we teach that bad shots are part of the process. Understanding the bad shots are part of the process of how you're going to get better. And you get a guy, you'll give him an hour lesson, and he goes out and plays bad. He throws out everything you just tried to help him with. Mm-hmm. And I use Tiger Woods as an example. After he won the Masters in '97, in '98, he wanted to change his swing. He didn't really like the position he was in at the top, and so let's try and get in a little better position up here. And he won the Masters by 12 shots. He's winning everything. And I said, yeah, okay, we can do that. I said, I agree, and I'll show you how to do it. I said, but, we got to do it a little at a time because you still have to play. He goes, no, I want to do it all at one time. I said, well, Tiger, 98, you're going to have to play. He said, I don't care. He said, I don't care if I don't win a tournament. I want to change this. And he worked on this motion change the whole year, and he only won once in 98, one time. But he was determined to make that change. And then you look at 99, 2000, 01, so on and so forth, the greatest years we've ever seen anybody play consistently. So the average person doesn't realize that it takes time for the change. It takes time for the change to feel comfortable. Yeah. When the best player in the world, it takes him almost a whole season to feel comfortable with a change. How the heck could a 15 handicap think he's going to take one lesson and all of a sudden he's going to win the club championship? I mean, that's not what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. But as an instructor, when you're giving these people lessons, you have to explain to them what they're doing wrong, why they're doing it. If you have video, you can show it to them. And then I'm a great believer, Mark, in making players hit balls with slow motion swings, because in slow motion, you can physically make your body do what you need to make it do. And if you tee up a 6 or 7 iron and hit 15 or 20 balls in slow motion with whatever the change your local PGA pro is trying to get you to do, it will help you understand your own golf swing.
So good. You know what? I remember the days when I was out there teaching full-time on the tour, and you'd be with Woods, and man, he was making thousands of those slow-mo swings. You had him pausing at the top for a while too.
Yeah, that was a drill that he hated. There's an old segment on the Golf Channel that I happened to just see the other day on the YouTube of him talking about that. He said, Butch used to make me go up to the top and stop and then start my downswing. He said, and I hated that drill. And he said, I bet I hit hundreds of balls like that, and I hated doing it. And Peter Kessler was the guy who was doing it then. He goes, yeah, but look at what has worked out. He goes, yeah, it worked good, but I hated doing it. But that's a great feeling, because for the average player, it lets them realize how much they throw their hands and arms in the club from the top and how much their back shoulder comes out and over it. And so if you let them stop, the first couple, they're going to hardly not hit it.
Yeah.
But then once they feel it, they'll start to feel the hands and arms dropping, the sequencing of the rotation of the torso and arms and shaft and club head getting to the ball on the right path. And square at impact was, as you said earlier, that's the only thing that matters, is get the club square at impact.
Hey, you've been so great with the anecdotes from your dad and such. I want to quickly jump here, and you've shared your insights. The listeners, obviously, fascination with Woods and Phil and all these stars, really. A lesson for the listeners from Tiger, is it that determination, that resilience, or is there something else?
Well, I think if you look at Tiger Woods and you look at how many times he changed his swing, he has never been one that just rests on where he is. He always thinks he can be better. I mean, if he shot 60, I should have shot 56.
Okay.
And that's what makes him so great. I was of the belief, in Tiger's case, and with most great players, if it's not broken, I don't think we need to fix it. If the ball is the barometer, the ball tells you if you're doing it right.
Now you sound like John Jacobs. Huh?
I learned so much from Mr. Jacobs. It was unbelievable. The ball tells you what you're doing. And listen, if you understand the golf swing, if you watch where the ball starts, the curvature of the ball, the spin on the ball, the trajectory on the ball, it pretty much tells you the path of the club and the club face angle at impact. And you can look at the divot, and that'll give you a little insight too. So these are all things in the way we were learned to teach. I mean, I could take any of my players and turn my back to them. And if I watch the ball and it's a bad shot, I could turn around and tell them what they were probably doing wrong without even seeing them, because I helped build the swing. So I have an understanding of the path of this individual swing and stuff. So you learn so much. You mentioned the great John Jacobs. He wrote a book back in the 70s called Practical Golf.
It's on my bedside table alongside yours.
And I think it's the best instructional book ever written. I have a copy that has yellow highlighting all through it. I make everybody who comes to work for me read it, and then I'll talk to them about it. To me, it's just common sense. It's all path and club face. And John was a genius in the way he could describe things and his demeanor. He's one of the greatest men I've ever met. Forget the golf side of it, just as a person. I was very honored that when he passed away and they had a memorial service in Winchester Cathedral, that I got to go speak at his service and stuff. It's one of the great honors I've ever had in my life. And literally, it was a quick trip. I flew over one day, gave a speech the next day, and flew right back to the U.S., but I wouldn't have done it any other way. He was such an influence in my teaching, and I know in yours too. And once again, it goes back to the way I learned. It's not hard to understand when you listen to him talk or read what he wrote.
And such a genteel manner about him. I hear that old English voice, rocking and blocking. It was
the best.
Yeah,
the best.
Incredible. And never any panic, which is something, I think a lot of folks can learn too, because things might be going wrong, but he was just there and it was going to be okay.
Well, all great teachers are positive, not negative. I can be the most negative person in the world when it comes to my own game. But when I teach, I am 100% positive. I stay positive with my students. I always have upbeat. I always try and make the lessons fun and have a good time. But you have to be positive. Golf's hard, and it's not easy. And just because a guy's hitting bad shots, you can see some improvement, and you have to be positive. One of the things I say when I try and do 1 or 2 seminars a year around the country for different PGA sections. And one of the things I tell these young instructors is, look, you have to realize that this person has taken his time off to come get your help. So you've got to be 100% positive in what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Never say to the guy, well, Mr. Jones, I think if you try this, it might happen. The guy goes, think? I'm paying you to know what you're talking about. I said, don't ever use the word, I think you should do this. Hey, be positive. This is the way it should be. And John Jacobs, in that beautiful voice of his, was always a positive person.
Yeah, so true. We've got this match coming up. Golf is coming back. I shouldn't date this because a podcast lives in the internet forever. But, it's Tiger Phil versus Brady and Peyton. A lesson for the listeners from Phil. You spend so much time with him.
Phil is a very interesting person. He, as you see in his Instagrams and stuff, his nickname on the tour is the Genius.
Yeah.
And I'm not too sure that Phil didn't come up with that himself, knowing Phil. But I think Phil Mickelson doesn't get near the credit mark he should. Phil Mickelson has won 44 tournaments in 5 majors in the Tiger Woods era.
Yes.
No one else is close. No one else is remotely close to what he has done in his life. And Phil Mickelson, to me, is the modern-day left-handed Arnold Palmer. He's a go-for-broke kind of guy. Mm-hmm. That's just how he plays, and I think that's why the fans love him. Greg was the same way. They're very aggressive players, and you're going to lose as many as you win that way, but that's just how they play. I think one of Phil Mickelson's strengths is his resilience. I mean, he has the ability that the last shot never happened, and God knows he's hit a lot of bad drives in his life.
Yeah.
But all great players have that. Seve had that. Jack had that. Dustin Johnson really has that. And that's something you can't really teach. I mean, think about your own playing. I mean, how many times have we played and we miss a green from 100 yards and bury one in the bunker and you make double bogey, and 3 holes later you're still thinking about that wedge shot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, these guys, and Tiger was a genius at it. This last shot never happened. And Mickelson is phenomenal at that his whole career. I mean, the guy's going to be 50 years old next month, and he's still competitive.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've got to ask two more questions. Thanks for your time.
Sure.
A hero to many of us old-timers, obviously the youngsters don't know Ben Hogan that much, but I've seen a picture of you as a young guy with your dad watching Mr. Hogan hit balls. A lesson from Ben Hogan, please.
Well, Ben Hogan, to me, was the greatest ball striker I'd ever seen. He had the game figured out. Now, his golf swing ruined a lot
players. Yours truly.
They tried to copy it. We all tried that flat motion, but the thing we didn't have was the torso rotation was so fast.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, until I saw Tiger Woods, I had never seen anybody's body rotate as fast as Mr. Hogan's could.
Okay.
The beauty of what he did and what I got to watch as a kid, and then I think the first time I played with Mr. Hogan, I was about 16, probably the most nervous I've ever been in my life, much more nervous than I was when I played my first U.S. Open and stuff.
Okay.
But the flight of the golf ball, if you hung a hula hoop in the air, these balls would all be going right through it. The flight of the golf ball was just phenomenal. The control of the way he played, the way he took apart a golf course, and understood he was so good that he knew he was playing a shot that if he knew he hit a bad shot, he knew where the ball was going to go. Just he had everything programmed in. I'll tell you a little story that I learned from listening to he and my dad talk about once. And they were talking about on game day, you got to do everything slow.
Okay.
When you wake up in the morning, get up slower, brush your teeth slower, shave slower, eat your cereal, drink your coffee, drive your car, all these things. And I can remember them talking about this, and they're saying, well, that just gears your nervous system down from the moment you get out of bed. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell are they talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, drive your car slower. I'm trying to drive mine fast. But having watched him practice so much and watch his ability to control his golf ball I would say the only thing close to ball striking, controlling the ball through the air to Hogan, and you'd probably agree with this, would be Lee Trevino.
Yeah.
Trevino had the ability to control the flight of his ball through the air so beautifully. And Ben Hogan was a very misunderstood person, Mark. He was a great friend of our family. We all knew him so well, and he was so generous with us. But he was an introvert, and he didn't feel comfortable around people that he didn't know very well. And so he came across sometimes as very arrogant and cold, and he really wasn't that way. It was just the way he played golf. He had to get in that frame of mind to play the best he could. Jack Nicklaus was probably the same way. Trevino's the complete opposite. He's got to be talking and stuff. That's his personality. But Mr. Hogan was a wonderful person. He was very generous with his time, with people. If you weren't on his inner circle, you weren't going to get in there.
Of course.
And I know I went to every major championship my father went to. My mother had 10 pregnancies. There's 6 kids in our family. So I would go starting when I was like 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. You've seen pictures of me. And there was no ropes in those days. You just walk down the fairway. I'm standing right next to watching these guys. And I can remember seeing my dad and say Jackie Burke or J. Hebert, guys that they played with a lot, come up on the first tee, and maybe there's only 2 of them. Maybe it's Dad and Mr. Hogan. And there'd be a young pro there standing there getting ready to tee off. And, he didn't have guts enough to say, may I join you? He just assumed that they'd say, join us. No, he never got a call. It wasn't going to happen. He said, no, pal, I'm sorry, you're not in this game. But he was a wonderful man. But I think that the thing you asked about, the control of the golf ball through the air, which, as you and I both know, is so important, he did it better than anybody that I've ever seen.
Well, to that, this is my parting question, and I'm so thankful for your time and your insight, Butch. I think it could be as simple as if you hook the ball, try and fade it, and you'll eventually hit the ball straight. And if you fade the ball, try and hook it some, and you'll straighten out the flight. I mean, is that Hogan-esque, and would Butch Harmon ascribe to that sort of a recommendation?
Absolutely. I believe in opposites. If you're hitting slices, I'm going to try and make you hit a hook. If you're hitting hooks, I'm going to try and make you hit a slice. And you'll meet in the middle. You have to understand what they're doing that causes the path to be out to in or too much in to out or whatever it is. But if you go to opposites, it's amazing how they meet in the middle and makes things easier. A lot of times, Mark, you don't even tell the guy how to do it. I'll say, well, let me see you hit some hooks. Well, how do you want me to hit a hook? I don't care. Just hit one. So I'm not sure I know how to do one. I said, okay, when you get in the trees and you got to take a 5-iron and hook it around the trees, what do? Oh, I close my stance off and I hood the club. I take it on the inside, let it roll over. I said, well, let me see you hit it if you like that.
And the ball comes out straight.
So it's just one of the little secrets of teaching. It's not always the X and O's. Once again, it goes back to what I said when we started this conversation. As an instructor, do you want to teach people to play golf or teach golf to people? And we like to teach people to play golf.
Well, you have taught a lot of folks with this conversation in your time. Butch Harmon, you're a legend. I appreciate you for everything you do, and I appreciate you for joining us on the show, man. Thank you so much.
Mark, it's an honor that you would ask me to do it. I'm happy to do it anytime you'd like. And we do have a couple matches coming up. The one at Seminole is going to be fun, too. That Skins game.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Well, look, golf is happening, and this is exciting stuff. So thanks for helping us tee it off.
Thank God live golf is happening.
Yeah, no kidding. Butch, you take care of you. I look forward to bumping into you down the road.
Okay, thank you, Mark. To you and your family and all your listeners, please stay safe and healthy.
This segment of the On the Mark podcast was brought to you by Synovus. Synovus, the bank of here. Well, I told you you'd rewind and you'd pause and you'd rewind and re-listen. So many great pearls there from Butch Harmon. And I just love the take. It's about playing better golf. And that's what it's about. In the final analysis, it's about lowering your golf score. And just my 2 cents worth for what it's worth, whatever you're doing, and I wrote about this in one of my columns for golf.com. I want to go and check it out there. Just go to golf.com, search Mark Immelman. Everything you do should end with a club face, because that is the tip of your spear. That is your only way of communicating with a golf ball. And so there should be logic involved. And if it doesn't seem logical what you're being advised to do or what you're doing, and you can't see a direct connection to the club face, I would advocate and recommend that perhaps you revisit what you're doing. Because the golf ball, golf club interaction is logical. And everything else from that should naturally be logical as well. So be cognizant and be mindful of this when you are working on your game. You've heard it from Butch Harmon, one of the greats in the game, and I've got to tell you, you heard us talk about John Jacobs, David Ledbetter, all of the super great golf instructors, and all of the great golfers for that matter. You heard the takes there. Greg Norman, Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, how they keep the game simple. That is what golf really is. At its core, you've got a bat, you've got a ball, and you've got a hole. And you've got to get the ball into the hole in as few strokes as possible. I know it sounds simplistic, but that is what it is at its base. And too often I see too many golfers getting mixed up and wrapped up in the weeds, and they lose the proverbial forest for the trees. Don't be that guy. Don't be that girl. You're a member of our tribe. We are the smartest, most informed golf listenership in the globe. Thanks for downloading this one. Do share this with your friends. Give us a follow on social media. I'm at Mark_Immelman on both Instagram and Twitter. And don't forget Skillist. If you're going to play golf, be safe, have lots of fun, and make lots of birdies. Take it easy.
This broadcast and all associated rights, including copyright, are owned exclusively by the PGA Tour and may not be used in whole or in part without the prior written permission of the PGA Tour.
Synovus is the bank of here. Here is where roots run deep and familiar faces welcome you home. Here's a place that keeps getting better with time because every generation leaves it better than the way they found it. And here's where our bankers are helping turn ideas into business realities because they understand what it means to be from here. It's where we smile when we see our customers and where they smile back. Synovus, the bank of here. Synovus, member FDIC, equal housing lender.